able to get enough support, even if you do well with independents. So when you deliver for people, I do think that they respond. You know, in 22 here in Florida, we obviously had a big election. You know, my election was the biggest for a Republican running for governor in the history of the state. But part of it was people felt, but it wasn't a great year for Republicans overall. Republicans underperformed nationally, but I think here was like, yeah, you know, you're delivering results. We're going to go out there. We're excited to go out there and vote. And I think that's what, so these congressmen and senators, are they going to get to where the people that put them there, you know, are thankful that they're there and realize how important it is? Because I think the other side is going to be energized. I think that's just the natural yin and yang of these midterms.
CFO and Gogley was here in Palm Beach County, and he brought us flashcards and he showed us that we are the worst in the state when it comes to wasting taxpayer dollars, $344 million. And since then, every county commissioner that I've talked to and every county official has been asking, what's he talking about? So my question to you, Governor DeSantis, is do you know, have you seen the audit? And can you give us sort of a preview of a coming attraction?
Right.
Where is the waste happening?
So here's what, first of all, Blaze, our CFO, is doing a great job. Very strong, big time bulldog, and he's been great on all these issues as a senator over the years. Election integrity, fighting illegal immigration, just top notch. So what he's doing in this round is not even itemizing, oh, look at this turkey, look at that. What he's doing is saying, okay, you know, you're getting us, because it goes back to 32 billion taken in 2019, now 56 billion now, right? What he's doing is he's saying, okay, where were you? And where are you now? Yes, we're going to give you increase for population growth. We're going to give you increase for inflation. We're going to give you increase to pay your employees more on top of all that. So he's doing very conservative estimates that if spending goes up with all those factors, and sometimes that's considerable, but then it goes up over and above that, you know, that's the level that becomes unreasonable. And so that's the first pass to show where we're looking at the whole thing. He's now going to go in and start to do some individual items. Like, you know, for example, it's like, you know, if you're spending, you know, $1 million on DEI, you know, I think people would rather have a property tax cut. I really do, right? If you're doing some of this other stuff. So he's going to do that. We're also, you know, you're looking at the counties. He's going to look at other major agencies that are in local government and do that. I mean, for example, you know, you've already seen like Broward, like the Broward School District, right? You know, massive bureaucracy, massive amount of money going to some of this stuff, not necessarily getting into the classroom, right? So all that's going to happen. But the initial one where he's showing the amount over, that's saying, okay, what were you spending before? What are you spending now? Yeah, you got to increase for all these things. And he's very conservative. And I think most people in this room would say, no, you didn't need to increase all that. But he's saying that's fine. He's saying you do all that and you're still spending hundreds of millions on top of that. What that does is I think it gives taxpayers the assurance that if you have an opportunity to vote on property tax, you know, they can tax the Airbnbs and all that stuff still. But like, you know, your personal residence, you know, honestly, they're spending a lot of money and the budgets have grown. And the question is, would you rather have escalating budgets or would you rather have taxpayer protection? I think most people would rather have taxpayer protection. Yes, ma'am.
For trying to understand what's happening between the U.S. and Venezuela and the Caribbean. Were you in the military? You served as a Navy JAG officer. So I'm wondering, from your experience, is the second attack that was launched on September 2nd on the Venezuelan boat, was that attack illegal? What's your take on what's going on?
So the question is about treating the narco terrorists as military targets rather than treating it as a law enforcement. And I think that the U.S. has a right to treat it and engage it as a military threat simply because we've seen over the last 10, 20 years the amount of people that have been killed by cartels bringing drugs in to our country. So it's not just like somebody's coming in and committing like a foot fault, right? I mean, this is really serious where people's lives are at stake, and the cartels have been able to move this product in with impunity for a long time. Now they have a different calculation. How each individual operates, I know the media is talking about this or that. I don't know. I haven't been briefed. I haven't seen that. But I do think the threshold question of, is it appropriate to say that somebody trying to enter your country with drugs that obviously can be deadly for people, do you have a right as commander in chief to repel that incursion into your country? And the answer to that is yes. Yes.
I'm looking at you endorsed Miami's mayoral race, which reports by almost 20 points. Is that a rejection of the policies?
I have no idea. I mean, you guys, the people down there would know a little bit more than me. I wasn't involved in the runoff. I did an endorsement in the original scrum. And then once it advanced to the runoff, it just wasn't something I was involved in. So I don't know what the issues were or any of that. But look, I would say this, it kind of is this same effect where you have one side is energized to come out, and that's going to be something that's likely to going to continue through the midterms and potentially even beyond from the midterms. Yes.
WPTV. Getting back to economics, one of the biggest criticisms we find in Florida is that home prices and rents are becoming above the means of people who are already here. Do you see the situation getting better, and is there anything that's being done?
Well, so first of all, I think the phenomenon you point out is a nationwide phenomenon. If you look right now and you compare the median home price in the United States to median income, it is very out of whack. I mean, just you can't look at 430 and 80,000, and how does that work if a family wants to buy and maintain a residence? And that's not even counting the property tax, insurance, all the other things that go into it. I just saw the analysis on automobiles. New automobile median is now $50,000. I remember when I was, I think probably like a college or law, I bought a pickup truck. I mean, I don't remember exactly, but I mean, it was like $10,000 to $15,000, right? And so, we have inflation, but the incomes aren't rising as fast as that. So it creates an issue. So what are we doing? One, look, government has helped fuel some of the issues with these markets in the past, right? We can't say we're going to make home prices less or this or that. It's just not something government does a good job on. I think what happened, partially the phenomenon that they're talking, we had a rush of people here. People were buying houses. You could sell a house, a 3-bedroom in California, and then buy like a 6-bedroom in Sarasota with what? I mean, that was, people were buying homes sight unseen. They were going in, they were doing all this stuff. And so it drove up prices. Now, prices went up everywhere, but Florida, you had kind of this crushing demand. And so that's just, so where we were 5 years ago compared to now these things correct, right? These markets work themselves out. You can't, unless you start having a massive increase in income, the idea that those prices are going to be able to stay, and that's what you're seeing now, I think, is homes aren't selling like they were during the COVID surge. I also think sellers are delisting homes because they're not getting offers or not the one. So what I think is going to happen is as interest rates come down, hopefully they do, mortgage rates, there'll be more buyers in the market, but they're not going to be paying COVID era prices. And so you're going to have a correction there in the market. Now, rents, we are seeing decline in rent in most parts of Florida. Now, look, Miami's a little bit different. I know West Palm's a little bit different markets. I still think you're seeing some relief there, but you're seeing 10, 15, 20% declines in like Fort Myers and some of these areas. And part of that is because there has been building of Florida. There's been an expansion of inventory, which I think has taken pressure off some of the rents. So the rents in most parts of Florida today are less than they were probably 2 years ago. And I think that trend's probably going to continue. Now, property tax I mentioned, I think that's a great way to provide people relief. Other costs that have gone up, and this is true nationwide. The number one thing, if you look item by item that's gone up in the last 4 or 5 years, has been auto insurance. Well, we did a big restructuring of our legal system that is impacting those markets in a positive way. Progressive just announced they're going to refund $1 billion to policyholders in Florida. State Farm just announced a 10% reduction. I think all the major auto carriers are going to be offering reductions. Now, some people will tell me, hey, I got mine, I didn't see a reduction. I was like, did you search for other companies? No. I was like, well, you got to search for, if you're willing to pay it, they're going to keep charging it. They don't lower prices out of the goodness of their heart. They lower prices because there's other companies that are competing for your business. And so if someone's offering you more competitive rates, you go there, that's obviously going to create a downward pressure. So more and more people are into the market because we changed the tort system instead of trying to benefit lawyers, which it had done to be more consumer focused. So the auto is likely to continue, and then homeowners as well. Peninsula is the number one carrier in Florida. They announced an 8% reduction, I think, last month. We were just at the reinsurance conference. They're sending capital now to Florida. They're confident because of the way the market has changed and there's more predictability. So you're going to see these rate filings come in over the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 months that I think are going to be positive for homeowners. And I've already talked to people that have been able to save. And again, that's just the fact that we've 16 companies have come into the market. They're trying to get new business, and we're doing that. Citizens insurance, which I know is big in Southern Florida. We went from, it ballooned to 1.2 million or 1.3 million. Now it's down to about 400,000, and it may go down to 300,000. So they were collecting all the premiums there and didn't probably have enough to make the pro. But now that they have fewer policies, they actually are going to be in a position where I think you may be able to see some reductions out of Citizens. Nationwide, this is true, not just Florida. The insurance and the taxes are combined more than the principal and interest on a lot of mortgages right now. And that's really tough because it used to be principal and interest was the big thing. Pay a little tax, pay a little insurance every month, but like that was it was modest. Now that's gone. So our markets have definitely turned in a positive direction. Not having a hurricane has been a huge help. We had 6 major hurricanes in 7 years. That is not good for that market. And then we had a really significant period nationwide of inflation, so that replacing homes was probably 50% to 100% more expensive than it had been just 4 or 5 years ago. And so hopefully that will moderate, and we're in a situation there. But not having the storm this year is big. People are now having confidence. There was a time when the companies did not want to be in this state for this because, there's risks, right? There's perils. But now they say there's predictability. They know they're going to suffer. There's losses that they can articulate and predict. Whereas when you have all the litigation, it used to be you could sue for 3 years. And so they would think that they had done something. And then they're like, I don't want to be a part of Florida. And so that's why a lot of people were going. And again, it's me about creating good conditions so that incentives can take over. So now you have all these companies that have come in. They want your business. You shop around and find the best deal that you can. So there's all those factors that are happening, but I do think we're not going to be able to force prices there. That's not the role of government, but I do think the market, when it goes up a lot, there is a correction. And I do think that that's going to happen. And, look, it's like when it goes up, if you're the owner, you have more value, at least on paper, right? So people like that. If you're trying to get into the market, it's harder. When it corrects, not as good for the person that has the property, but then the people trying to get in, all of a sudden, where it would have been 2 years ago, now maybe it's something that you can afford. So there's a lot of factors to go on that. We have done, final thing I'll just say is, we have helped with getting more inventory in the rental market, and you are seeing that, I think. But we've also helped some of the police and fire and teachers and nurses with our Hometown Heroes, which just helps them with closing costs and down payment. They wanted to expand it to everybody. I say, once you expand it to everyone, then everyone else is just gonna pocket that. If it's only for a discrete group, then they can maybe do it. So we did do that. It's been popular. I think people have enjoyed it. Yes, ma'am.
HOA bill that was introduced by State Rep 1-4. It talks about promoting transparency and fairness between HOA and homeowners.
I have not seen it. I do know, just having traveled this state extensively, you get some nasty situations with these HOAs. I get it. On the one hand, if you didn't have anything, then you have one bad neighbor that doesn't cut their lawn and it's an eyesore. But on the other hand, it's like, man, you put a flag in your front yard, all of a sudden you're getting fined or something like that. So who knows? I mean, I'm happy to look at whatever the legislature does, in that regard. But I haven't seen any specific pieces of legislation. Yes.
About 70% of the people that have been held in Alcatraz don't have final visitation orders. I know you previously said that was only going to be used for people with final visitation orders. Did that policy change, and when and why?
Well, I think what happened was when we first opened it, they said they had enough people with deportation orders that it would likely be that. Then people are like, oh, so you're saying none of them do it. And then basically I think what I said was, no, we're not saying none of them do. We're saying that that's what it predominantly is. But, that was 3 or 4 months ago. And so now we're in a different situation. So I don't know the answer to that. The state doesn't select who goes there. That's selected there by DHS. The state is, basically serving to utilize space to be able to go until they can get more space for themselves. They have very little space in Florida, even though we're the third largest state. So we have the one in North Florida, in Baker County. We're working on one in the Panhandle. We're working on another one south of I-4 that will hopefully be what needs to be done. But my goal would be, if they have enough space to be able to handle this, we don't need to be in that business, right? We're doing it to help them because we don't want these people released on the street if they're supposed to be earmarked for deportation. And we're now closing in on Florida Highway Patrol. I think they've gotten close to 10,000 arrests of illegal aliens this year. And if you think about it, that's not their core function. So, you have the feds who are supposed to do this job every day, and then our highway patrol is supplementing, and they've done another 10,000 on top of that. And that's because, we want to be in the mission. We believe in the mission. And I always get these questions, or people will say, oh, Florida taxpayers are funding that. First of all, it's reimbursed. I said it at the time it was going to be reimbursed, and they still tried to say, do. Then when they confirmed that it was going to be reimbursed, they just kind of ignored it, the critics, and they just say, oh, no, you're spending. So I don't know how much it's going to cost, over the next 6 months precisely for, say, our North Florida one. I know it's one of our own facilities, so it's probably going to be met. But I also know it's reimbursable, 100%. So from a taxpayer perspective in Florida, you're not out on that. But let me tell you, you're saving. Illegal immigration costs taxpayers. It costs health care. It costs education. It costs law enforcement, unfortunately, sometimes. It costs accidents. How many, they don't have, we don't give driver's license in Florida. They don't have insurance. And so you have all these problems. And so I never hear the media or the critics talk about how much we're saving taxpayers by removing illegal aliens, and especially some of the criminal aliens who are likely to reoffend. But that's been a big deal. And so from what we've done with Highway Patrol, FDLE, our local sheriffs, all of that, you're talking about a large, sizable, but that's on top of what DHS is doing. And that does make a difference. That makes a difference for taxpayers. So we're going to end up out of this having net gained, and a lot of the gain will be to local communities rather than the state, right? These hospitals, the school systems, all those things. But it's hard. I mean, you get crowded, and then it's also just like, how many people coming illegally don't even speak English? So then you inject that in the schools, it makes it more difficult. So there's a whole host of problems that I think that stems from that. We're doing kind of what what the people wanted us to do, supplementing the federal government's efforts. And if they had the ability to do it all on their own, then, we would always, if our highway patrol finds somebody and they don't have a license, they're illegal, they will turn them over. But we're going on, we're active with DHS, and we're happy to do that. Totally happy to do that. Okay, thanks, guys. You guys have a good one. Enjoy the weekend. Oh, it's Wednesday. This is how the brain works. You come to Palm Beach and you think you're here for the weekend because it's so